prison camp was a place of fear. Men whispered at night, their voices low as if afraid the guards or something worse might hear them. The air smelled of smoke and rust, and the walls of the cages were wet with rain that leaked through broken roofs. Everyone carried the same heavy silence, but sometimes one name broke through that silence: the Giantess. They said she was not like the others. She was taller than any man, her body strong enough to crush steel. The guards called her a beast. The captives called her cursed. Every story painted her as a danger. "If she ever gets free," one man whispered, "she will tear apart the first fool who goes near her." Another swore she had killed whole squads of soldiers with her bare hands before being captured. The guards laughed at the fear in the prisoner's eyes, feeding the rumor every day. It was a warning and a joke at the same time. No one wanted to go near her cage, but one man did. He was not brave. He was not strong. He was just another starving prisoner who had lost almost everything. His name was forgotten by most. His life nothing but pain and chains. Yet when he walked past her cell one night, his eyes met hers for the first time. They glowed faintly in the dark, strange and unblinking, like the eyes of a creature watching from the shadows. For a moment he froze. His heart pounded. The stories filled his head. She would crush him, break him, destroy him. But she did not move. She only stared. The man swallowed hard and looked away. Still, something inside him refused to forget that moment. Unlike the others who trembled and hurried past her, he could not stop thinking. Why had she not attacked? Why did her gaze feel less like hunger and more like silence? The next day, the whispers grew louder. A prisoner told him that she once ripped the bars of her cell before the guards beat her half to death. Another swore she had been caught trying to escape, leaving a trail of broken bodies behind her. Each tale made her sound more terrifying, less human. But when he passed her again, he saw the truth the others refused to notice. Her arms were scarred. Her wrists were raw where the chains dug deep. Her body was not resting, it was suffering. He wondered if the rumors were lies. The man sat by the fire that night, listening to the laughter of guards. They boasted about their trophies, about the beast they had chained. "She's worth more than all of you combined," one guard said, spitting into the dirt. "But don't worry, she won't last long. Even giants starve." The men laughed, throwing bones into the flames. That night the prisoner could not sleep. He remembered her eyes again, remembered the scars, remembered the rumors. Everyone else had already judged her. But he kept asking himself, what if they were wrong? What if she was not a monster but a prisoner just like him? His chance came when the guards dragged him to carry water near her cage. The rain had ended and the ground was wet with mud. He stumbled, nearly falling, when he saw her sitting in the shadows. She was bigger than he had imagined, her head bowed, chains binding her arms and legs. She did not move when the guards pushed him forward, did not roar, did not rage. She only lifted her head slightly and looked at him. Her eyes caught his again. There was no anger there, only quiet, only waiting. The guards shouted at him to move faster and he obeyed. But when he passed her cell, his hand trembled. He carried bread in his pocket, a small piece he had saved. His body screamed for food, yet his heart whispered something else. He stopped. The guards were gone. No one was watching. The man slowly dropped the piece of bread near her cage. For a long moment, nothing happened. His breath caught in his chest. Then with slow, careful movement, she reached out. The chain rattled as her large hand brushed the dirt. She picked up the bread, held it close, and did not eat it at once. She only looked at him. Why? Her voice was low, almost broken, yet clear. It was the first word she had spoken in days, maybe weeks. The man's heart raced. He wanted to run, but his feet would not move. The stories had said she would kill anyone who helped her. Yet here she was, asking a single question, her voice filled with something no one expected: sadness. He turned away quickly, afraid of what he had just done. The camp was full of rumors, but now he carried something heavier than a rumor. He carried a secret, and deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The camp buzzed with whispers after that night. The man tried to act normal, tried to hide what he had done, but inside his chest the memory of her voice would not leave him. Why? That single word had cut through the endless noise of chains and shouts, through the laughter of cruel guards. He had not answered her. He had been too afraid. And yet every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face in the dark, her eyes glowing with a question no one else cared to ask. He told himself it was madness. She was dangerous. She was a giantess chained for a reason. The rumors were endless. She had destroyed armies. She had crushed men under her feet. She had torn walls apart with her bare hands. The guards bragged about the scars they had earned fighting her. Every word said the same thing. She was death. And still something in him refused to believe. The next night his hunger burned again. He clutched the small piece of bread he had managed to steal, planning to save it for himself. His ribs showed through his thin skin, his body weak from endless labor. Yet as he lay on the hard ground, he found his feet moving on their own. He slipped away from the other prisoners, careful not to wake them, and walked toward the far corner of the camp where her cage stood. The moonlight fell across her chains. She sat silent, her head bowed, but when he came close, she raised her eyes. No words, no growl, no roar, only waiting. He stopped a few steps away, his heart racing. Should he give her food again? Should he risk it? Every story screamed at him to run. He imagined her hand snapping the bars, her strength crushing his bones. He imagined his body left in the mud while the guards laughed. But then he looked closer. The giantess's lips were dry. Her hands shook faintly as she held the chain. Her body looked less like a monster's and more like someone starving, someone broken. Slowly, he held out the bread. His hand trembled, but he did not pull back. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing as if testing him. The chain rattled when she reached forward, careful this time, and her fingers brushed his hand. He almost dropped the bread, but she took it gently. Not like a beast. Not like a killer. For a long time, she only stared at the food. Then she broke it into 2 pieces. He watched in disbelief as she pushed one piece back toward him through the gap in the bars. His breath caught. "Why?" he whispered before he could stop himself. Her voice was quiet but clear in the night air. "Because you need it too." The word struck him harder than any blow. He stood frozen, unable to speak. In all his years in chains, no one had ever shared with him. The prisoners stole from each other. The guards treated them worse than animals. And yet this giantess, this so-called monster, had given half back. From that night he returned again and again. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he brought water. At first their words were few, but slowly their silence turned into something more. She told him her name in a whisper, a name no one in the camp bothered to know. She told him she had not been captured because she was wild, but because she had defended her people until she was the last one standing. Betrayal had left her in chains, not rage. The more he listened, the more he saw the truth. She was not what they claimed. She was not the monster, but danger grew. Other prisoners began to notice him slipping away at night. They whispered that he was mad. Some warned him openly, "Stay away from her. She'll kill you when she can." Others mocked him. "Maybe she'll make a meal of you, little fool." The guards, too, began to watch closer. One night, as he turned from her cage, a soldier's voice barked out from the shadows. He froze, his body stiff with fear, but the guard only spat into the dirt and laughed. "Go on, feed the beast. It'll save us the trouble when she rips your head off." His laughter echoed through the camp as the man stumbled back to his own cage. That night, sleep did not come. His mind raced with fear. If the guards truly believed he was helping her, they would kill him. If the prisoners grew jealous, they might betray him. And yet he knew he could not stop. Something stronger than fear pulled him back to her. One evening, he came with nothing. He had no bread, no water, only himself. She looked at him, eyes sharp as the moonlight, and asked softly, "Why risk this?" He shook his head, his throat tight. "Because you don't deserve this." Not like the others say. For the first time, her face changed. A small, strange smile touched her lips, faint but real. It vanished quickly, as if she feared to show weakness. But he had seen it. The man walked away that night with a decision heavy in his chest. He knew the choice was already made. He would keep helping her. He would keep returning no matter the risk. And deep inside, he felt the first spark of something dangerous, something stronger than fear, hope. The days in the camp blurred into one another. Endless labor, endless hunger, endless cruelty. But for him, one thing broke the monotony, the silent moments with the giantess. He no longer feared her the way others did. Every night he stole a few breaths of freedom by slipping near her cage. And every night she was waiting. At first their words were few. Sometimes she asked about the bread, sometimes about the guards. Sometimes she said nothing, only looked at him with eyes that carried both strength and sorrow. But over time, those silences began to change. The pauses became easier. The air around them felt different, warmer, as if they were not enemies at all but two people sharing a secret the world could never understand. One night he finally asked the question that burned in his chest. Why? Did they chain you? Why do they call you a monster? She was quiet for a long time. The only sound was the clinking of her chains as she shifted. Then she spoke, her voice low, rough from disuse. I fought to protect my people. They came with fire, with steel, with lies. I stood alone. They called it rebellion. I call it survival. He swallowed hard, unsure what to say. And the stories, they say you killed hundreds. Her head turned slightly, eyes narrowing, but not in anger. I did not choose war. I did not choose blood. But when invaders come, do you let them take everything? I fought. And yes, many died. Her words chilled him, but not because they were frightening. It was the calmness in her voice, the honesty. She was not denying what she had done, but she was not proud of it either. It was the truth of someone who had no reason to lie anymore. He nodded slowly. You were defending them. For the first time, her lips curved into something faint, something fragile. A smile. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, but it was enough. From then on, their bond deepened. He told her small things about himself, how he had once worked in the fields, how he had lost his family in the raids, how hunger had followed him long before chains did. He admitted he had nothing left. She listened quietly, her eyes soft, never mocking, never turning away. She shared pieces of her own past. She told him of her village built near rivers, of songs her people sang around great fires, of children who climbed on her shoulders and laughed. When she spoke of them, her voice grew lighter for a moment, almost gentle before it sank again into silence. It was in those moments he realized something powerful. She was not a beast. She was not a monster. She was a protector robbed of her people, a warrior broken by betrayal. But danger circled closer. The guards had grown suspicious. Twice now they had caught him near her cage, and though they laughed, calling him the fool feeding his own death, their eyes were sharper each time. He knew one day their laughter would turn to punishment. One night as he approached, he heard voices. He froze in the shadows, heart racing. Two guards stood near her cage, speaking in low tones. She won't last long. Chains are eating her alive. Good. The commander wants her gone anyway. Too dangerous to move with the rest. The man's breath caught. They were planning to kill her. He pressed himself against the wall, trembling. If she died, the bond they had built would die with her. He couldn't let that happen. But what could he do? When the guards left, he crept closer. She was awake, her eyes glowing faintly. I heard them, he whispered. They want to kill you. Her expression did not change. She only lowered her head. I know. Something inside him snapped. You can't just wait for it. His voice shook. There has to be a way out. For the first time, her gaze hardened. And what would you do, small one? You would open these chains? You would stand against them? He could not answer. He had no plan, no power. Yet the thought of leaving her to die felt heavier than fear. If I don't try, he said softly, then what have I lived for? Her eyes softened again, and for a moment the silence between them was not empty but full of something unspoken, fragile and dangerous. That night, he lay awake on the cold ground, heart pounding. His body screamed at him to stop, to let go, to survive alone. But his mind would not let go of her words, of her face, of the bond they now shared. He had made a choice without even realizing it. He would try. And in that choice, their bond became something more than whispers in the dark. It became a spark, a dangerous spark, that could burn the entire camp to the ground. The decision weighed on him day and night. Once, he had thought only of survival, of getting through each day without starving, without being beaten. But now he could not stop thinking of her. The Giantess was no beast. She was no monster. She was someone chained unjustly, someone who had trusted him with her truth. And if the guards killed her, it would be like watching the last piece of hope in the camp vanish forever. The camp around him moved like clockwork. Prisoners dragged wood, carried stones, dug trenches. Guards shouted, laughed, and struck anyone who fell. The man did his work silently, but his mind was racing. He studied the camp in ways he never had before: the walls, the patrols, the keys that clinked at the guards' belts. He memorized the rhythm of footsteps in the night, the sound of the watchtower bell, the shift of torches. Every detail mattered. One evening, as the sun set behind the broken fence, he slipped a question into the silence between him and the giantess. "If I could free you," he whispered, "would you run?" Her eyes lifted, watching him carefully. "Freedom is a dream," she said quietly. "Dreams do not open locks." "But if they did?" His voice was desperate. For a long moment she was silent. Then she said, "I would not run. I would fight." Her words shook him. He imagined the chaos, the guards screaming, the camp burning. He imagined her tearing the chains away and facing the world that had hunted her. And in that picture he saw himself at her side. But he had no weapon, no strength, no plan. Only a thin body and a heart that beat too loudly. Still, he began to act. At night, he pretended to stumble near the guard posts, letting his eyes follow the heavy iron keys that swung from their belts. He noticed that one guard, lazier than the rest, often tied his key ring loosely to his sash. The man's hands itched with the thought of stealing it. Days passed, and the rumors spread again. The commander planned to move the camp within the week. Some said the prisoners would be sold. Others whispered they would be executed before the march. The giantess's chains were too heavy to move. Everyone knew what that meant. She would not survive the journey. The man's heart grew heavier. Time was running out. One night he crouched in the mud outside her cage. His hands shook as he leaned close to the bars. "They will kill you before they move us," he whispered. She looked at him, her face calm despite her wounds. "Then let it be. No." His voice cracked louder than he intended. He gripped the bars tightly. "I won't let it." For the first time, her expression shifted. Not anger, not sorrow, but something close to surprise. She leaned closer, her eyes burning. "Do you understand what you are saying? To free me is to end your life." He swallowed hard, but his answer came without hesitation. "Then, let my life end doing something that matters." Her silence stretched between them. Finally, she said softly, "You are braver than you know." That night he made his move. The camp was drowned in rain, the torches dimmed by the storm. The guards huddled in corners, grumbling about the weather. The man waited, his heart beating like a drum, until the lazy guard slumped against the wall, half asleep. With shaking fingers he crept closer, every step heavy with fear. The key ring glimmered faintly in the torchlight, swaying at the man's belt. His hand darted out. For one terrifying second the guard stirred. The prisoner froze, breath held, rain soaking his hair. But the guard only muttered and shifted, and the keys came free in his hand. He almost ran right then. But instead he forced himself to walk back slowly, like any other prisoner, until the shadows swallowed him. His chest burned with panic. The keys felt like fire in his pocket. That night he slipped to her cage again. His hand trembled as he held out the ring. Her eyes widened in the dark, not with fear but with something sharper. Hope. "You stole them." He nodded, too afraid to speak. The giantess lowered her head until her face was level with his. "You are choosing death." "Maybe," he whispered. "But so are you if you stay chained." Her chains rattled softly as she shifted, her massive hands reaching toward the lock. For the first time, the sound of metal did not mean despair, it meant a chance. But before he could slide the key into the lock, a voice rang out behind him. "Hey, what are you doing there?" The man's blood froze. The shout froze him in place. His heart slammed against his ribs, the stolen keys heavy in his trembling hand. The rain poured harder, drumming on the cages, drowning his breath. He turned slowly, his legs weak. A guard stood in the shadows, torch in one hand, sword in the other. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The guard squinted, then barked a laugh. "I knew it." The fool is feeding the beast again." His voice rose, sharp and mocking, echoing through the camp. Commander was right. "Curiosity will kill this rat." Other guards stirred from their posts, heads turning toward the cage. Torches lit the mud, and the sound of boots splashed closer. The prisoner's mind screamed at him to run, but his body stayed still. He could not leave, not now. Not after everything. The giantess's eyes flicked to him, then to the guards. Her voice was low, urgent. "Unlock it now." His hands shook as he shoved the key into the lock. It scraped, stuck, then finally turned with a harsh click. The sound was like thunder in the night. One shackle fell free, crashing against the ground. The guards roared in alarm, "Stop him!" They rushed forward, blades gleaming, torches swaying. The man fumbled with the second lock, his fingers slick with rain. His chest tightened with panic. Then he felt her massive hand brush against his shoulder. "Move." In one swift motion, the giantess tore the weakened chain apart with her free arm. The iron link snapped, clattering to the mud. Her roar shook the camp, a sound that sent chills racing down every spine. Guards stumbled back in shock, some dropping their weapons. The man stumbled aside as she rose to her full height for the first time. Even weakened, even scarred, she towered over everyone. Lightning flashed behind her, throwing her shadow across the cages like a monster out of legend. But she was no monster to him. The first guard lunged, blade high. She caught him with one hand and flung him into the mud like a rag doll. Another swung his sword, cutting across her arm, but she barely flinched. Her other hand crashed into him, sending him sprawling. The man stood frozen, his breath locked in his throat. The rumors had been true. Her strength was terrifying. Yet she was not tearing him apart. She had not crushed him like the others said she would. No. Her rage was aimed only at those who had chained her. "Run!" she shouted, her voice echoing like thunder. He stumbled into motion, his feet splashing through the mud. Guards chased him, but she moved faster. She grabbed one by the collar, slammed another into the bars of a cage. Chains rattled as prisoners inside shouted in shock and hope. The commander himself stormed into the chaos, his red cloak whipping in the wind. "Kill them both!" he roared. His men obeyed, charging forward with spears. The giantess stood over the prisoner, her arms wide, blocking the attack. Spears struck her, scraping across her skin, but she held firm. With a roar, she ripped one from an enemy's hands and swung it like a tree trunk, scattering men in every direction. The prisoner tried to help, grabbing a rock and striking a guard's leg. It was a pathetic effort, but it bought him a breath of time. A soldier's blade slashed across his arm and he cried out, stumbling back. Blood mixed with the rain. Before the soldier could finish him, the giantess's hand swept in, shielding him. Her fist crashed down, sending the guard sprawling lifeless into the mud. She looked at him, eyes burning, and for the first time she spoke his name. The name no one else had bothered to remember. "You will not die here." Her voice gave him strength. Together they ran through the chaos. Guards shouted, prisoners screamed, the commander cursed. Arrows hissed through the rain, but she caught one mid-air, snapping it in half before it could pierce him. They reached the edge of the camp, the wooden fence looming ahead. The giantess slammed her shoulder into it and the rotting wood cracked. A second blow tore it open, spilling splinters into the storm. Alarms rang behind them. Torches flared. Dogs barked, soldiers shouted. The entire camp was alive with fury and fear, but for the first time the man felt something stronger than fear inside his chest. He felt freedom close enough to taste, yet as they slipped into the darkness beyond the fence, a horn sounded from the watchtower. The commander's voice bellowed above the storm. "Do not let them escape. Hunt them down. The giantess dies before dawn." The man staggered, blood dripping from his arm, breath ragged. The giantess lifted him onto her shoulder with one swift motion, carrying him as if he weighed nothing. Her stride was long, fast, furious. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. The breakout had begun, but freedom was still far away. The forest was a wall of shadows and rain. Branches slapped against their faces as the giantess ran, carrying the man on her shoulder. Her long strides crushed the mud, each step shaking the earth. Behind them, horns echoed through the storm and torches flickered in the distance. The hunt had begun. The man clung to her, his injured arm burning, blood still dripping down his sleeve. He wanted to speak, to tell her to leave him, but his voice caught in his throat. She was breathing hard, her body weakened by chains and hunger, yet she refused to slow. "They are close," he whispered finally, his voice trembling. "I know," she answered, her voice low and steady. But they will not take you. Her words were strange to him. All his life, no one had ever spoken with such certainty for his sake. He had always been alone, always forgotten. Yet now this giantess, once feared as a beast, ran through the storm not for herself, but for him. The forest thickened around them. Roots rose like traps in the ground. Branches tore at her skin, but she pressed forward. The sound of dogs barking grew nearer, followed by the shouts of soldiers. The hunt was closing in fast. At last, she set him down on his feet. "Run," she ordered. He staggered, confused. "What about you?" She turned, eyes fierce. "I will hold them." "No." His voice broke, louder than he meant. "They'll kill you." For a moment, their eyes locked. Then her lips curved into something faint, almost like a smile. They already tried. Before he could argue, the first wave of hunters crashed through the trees. Torches flared, dogs lunged, spears gleamed. She roared and swung a fallen branch like a weapon, smashing 2 soldiers into the mud. The dogs leapt, but she caught one mid-air and hurled it aside. The man's body screamed at him to flee, but his heart would not let him. He grabbed a rock, swung it at a soldier's leg, and knocked the man down. His chest burned with fear, but also something new: courage. The giantess fought like a storm, her body moving with power and fury. Chains still clung to her legs, slowing her, but even weakened, she was unstoppable. Guards screamed as she broke through their lines, leaving broken spears and shattered torches in her wake. "Stay close," she shouted. He obeyed, stumbling behind her, ducking arrows that hissed through the rain. At one point, he tripped and fell hard into the mud. A soldier raised his sword above him, but the giantess's hand swept in again, crushing the man before the blade could fall. She lifted the prisoner onto her shoulder once more, as if he were weightless. The chase did not end. More horns blared in the distance. The commander's voice thundered through the night. "Bring me their heads." The forest thinned, and ahead the man saw an open stretch of land, a river swollen with rain, its current raging. His heart sank. Crossing it would be nearly impossible. But the giantess did not hesitate. She charged into the water, the river rising around her waist, her muscles straining against the current. The man clung to her neck, terrified they would both be swept away. Behind them, torches lit the riverbank as soldiers reached the edge, shouting curses into the storm. Arrows flew. One grazed her shoulder, another sank into her thigh. She staggered but kept moving. Each step forward seemed impossible, yet she forced herself through the torrent until at last her feet struck the far bank. With a final burst of strength, she pulled herself and the man onto the muddy shore. The rain washed blood from her wounds. She dropped to one knee, gasping for breath. The man slid off her shoulder, landing in the mud beside her. For a moment, they simply breathed, listening to the roar of the river behind them. "They can't follow," he whispered, looking at the furious soldiers trapped on the far side. The river's current was too strong. The enemy would have to march for hours to find a crossing. The giantess lifted her head, eyes glowing faintly in the stormlight. "Not tonight," she said, "but they will hunt again." He looked at her, at the scars on her arms, the blood on her skin, the strength in her gaze. "Then we'll keep running," he said softly. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Together." The word settled deep in his chest, heavier than chains, stronger than fear. He had nothing, no family, no freedom, no home. But in that single word he felt he had something worth living for. The forest ahead was dark, full of unknown dangers. But as they limped into the shadows, the prisoner no longer felt like prey. He was no longer just surviving. For the first time, he felt like he was part of something greater. And in the distance, hidden by trees and rain, more eyes were watching, eyes that belonged not to humans but to her people. The night was heavy with silence after the storm. The forest dripped with rain, every leaf shining in the moonlight. The man and the giantess walked slowly, their bodies aching, their breaths ragged. She carried wounds that would have killed others, yet her steps remained steady. He leaned against her arm, too weak to stand tall but unwilling to stop. They had survived the breakout, survived the river, but he knew the hunt was not over. Every sound made his heart jump, a snapping branch, a distant howl. He expected soldiers to burst from the shadows at any moment. Yet something else stirred in the trees, a rustle that was not human. Eyes glimmered faintly in the darkness, watching. He froze, grabbing her arm. "Someone's there." Her expression changed. Not fear, but recognition. She straightened, lifting her head, her glowing eyes meeting the unseen watchers. "It's them," she whispered. Before he could ask, the forest shifted. Figures stepped from the shadows, tall, strong, their skin marked with strange patterns, their weapons gleaming in the moonlight. They were like her, only fewer, their faces hard and sharp. They had been hiding, waiting. One of them, taller than the rest, spoke first. His voice was deep and commanding. "Sister." The giantess lowered her head slightly. "Brother," the man's breath caught. He had expected enemies, but these were her people. The ones she had spoken of in whispers, the ones she had tried to protect before chains took her. The brother's eyes shifted to the human. His face hardened. Why is he here? The prisoner felt small under that stare, smaller than ever. His body screamed to step back to hide, but the giantess placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Because he chose me." The brother's jaw tightened. "He is weak. He is the enemy's slave. You risk everything by bringing him." The man's chest burned with shame. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but no words came. He was nothing compared to them. Just a fragile human who had stolen scraps and stumbled in the mud. What right did he have to stand among them? But before he could turn away, the giantess spoke louder, her voice shaking the forest. "He is not weak. When all others feared me, when all others left me in chains, he stood by me.
He gave me bread.
He gave me hope. And when I was dying, he chose to free me." The silence that followed was heavy. The other giants shifted uneasily, their eyes flickering between her and the man. The brother frowned, his hand tightening on his weapon. "He is one man," he said coldly. "He cannot stand with us." The giantess stepped forward, her towering form casting a shadow over her own kin. "Then I will stand with him." The words fell like thunder. Even the forest seemed to still. The man stared up at her in shock, his chest tightening. She had chosen him. Not out of pity, not out of desperation, out of trust. The brother's eyes narrowed. "You would turn from your people for him?" "No," she said firmly. "I would lead my people with him." Her voice carried strength, but also something deeper. Conviction. The other giants whispered among themselves. Some frowned, some nodded, some looked away. The brother's anger flared, but even he seemed shaken. Before he could answer, the sound of horns echoed in the distance. Torches flickered beyond the trees. The humans had found the trail. The man's heart sank. "They're coming." The giantess raised her head, eyes blazing. "Then let them come." Her people stepped forward, forming a wall of strength. Spears glimmered in the moonlight. Bows were raised. The prisoner stood frozen, but then her hand brushed his once more. "Stand with me," she whispered. His body trembled, but his voice came out firm. Always. When the soldiers burst into the clearing, they were met not by one broken giantess, but by an army standing at her side. The commander's shout died in his throat as he saw her rise tall, unchained, unbroken, and no longer alone. The battle that followed was swift and brutal. The giants fought like a storm unleashed, their fury breaking the human line. The commander tried to strike the man down, but the giantess blocked him, her roar shaking the trees. She drove him into the mud, his blade falling from his hand. When the last horn fell silent, the forest was theirs. The prisoner stood gasping, his chest burning, blood still dripping from his wounds. Around him, the giants stood tall, their eyes fierce but no longer hostile. His gaze rose to the giantess. She looked down at him, her expression soft despite the battle. "You chose me," she said quietly. "And you chose me," he answered. In that moment, he realized something powerful. The rumors had been lies. The chains had been lies. She was not a monster. She was not a beast. She was a leader, and she had chosen him to stand beside her. The forest was quiet again, the storm gone. Together they stepped into the night, no longer prisoner and giantess, but allies, perhaps even something more. And in the silence, a legend was born. The story of the captive giantess and the human who dared to believe in her.